How is it that you deal with clients that send individual one-to-one chats or emails to one person on the project and not using any of the group messages or not knowing how to use CC properly? Hi guys, my name is Deepak Shukla, founder of the Pearl Lemon Group. We're a business growth and development agency based in the UK, USA, as well as serving clients worldwide. And here today, in day number 59, we're here to talk about clients that just directly respond instead of responding at a group level and how annoying and frustrating that is. But before we get into it, if you need any support with your corporate communications, please do reach out to us and click the link in the description below to get access to 7 additional strategies that are not going to be shared in this training. So look, fundamentally, some clients just respond one-to-one despite your messages to respond in a group, despite your messages to be sure to include the CC. So here's what I would recommend that you do. Ultimately, give it a two-strike rule, okay? So what I mean by a two-strike rule is, first of all, you need to, of course, make the announcement to say, Frank, can you keep all of the messages? So moving forward, we're going to set up a group. We're going to add you to the group. Can you always respond in the group so that everyone can see your messages? It's going to save us a lot of time. Also, if I'm being honest, I always check group messages when it comes to work. And I don't always check the individual chat. So there's a possibility that I'll respond very late to an individual chat, and groups I always pick up upon because that's where I use as a reference point. Does that sound reasonable to you? So stating that, making that explicit from the get-go is really important. So again, to repeat, hey Frank, really excited to have to be working with you. So I'm your campaign manager. We're going to go ahead and set up a WhatsApp group with the rest of the team. Now Frank, if it's okay, it's super important you just message in that group, and when you email, you include everyone that's going to be CC'd into you. There's a reply all function on Gmail, and of course you know how to use group chats and WhatsApp. Does that sound reasonable to you? Yes, it does. The reason I'm saying that, Frank, is I don't always check. I check my individual emails as well as my individual DMs last, and the problem is it creates more work, and we'll end up asking you for more money, if I'm being honest. Now, I'm thinking about that out loud. You don't want to say that, so scrap that bit. But you do want to say that, if I'm being honest, I respond late to sometimes really late when it comes to my individual DMs. So once you've stated that and that's happened, now let's assume that your client still ignores that and ends up DMing you. 2 strikes, meaning that number 1, you respond, but so respond and remind effectively. So respond and remind is, here's your answer, Frank, can you please, but always respond late, okay? So 72 hours. So initially you need to train your client to ultimately use the groups. So that's something that's important that you do. So when I say use the groups, what I mean is, if the client responds saying, Celeste, now of course, if the client requests, depending upon the nature of the request, Celeste, can we have a quick phone call? That might be a little bit different, but again, you want to train them to use a group, so you can choose to just blanket ignore them for at least 72 hours, because that's the standard that you set to begin with. So then if you begin responding immediately, it's just going to look a bit funny. So respond after 3 days in an individual group, individual message, and respond immediately inside groups, and then allow 2 times for this to happen where they individually message you, and respond and remind them as discussed. Let's get rid of that. So respond with an answer, wait 3 days, and then remind them that you don't check your messages sometimes, so you might miss them. If they do it a 3rd time, ignore them, okay? If you're having troubles ignoring them, delete the message so that you don't even have the message to pass on. And that is going to be a really surefire way to get them using the groups. Now, your client may end up being pissy, your client may, so there's different risks associated with it, but in the main, if a client agrees to it up front, then that's something you can afford to keep the client living up to keep the client disciplined and in check, where you say use groups, use reply all functions. I would, after 2 instances of it happening where you've reminded them again, the 3rd time you would just blanket ignore the client until they pop up in one of the groups or they message somebody else. And then this is so what we're doing here is we're effectively training our clients And what is it that we require them to do? We're training them to ultimately use the group function. And what happens when you reply and respond individually? You quickly make them recognize, irrespective of what's being said, that actually I can DM you. Actually, you do respond in spite of what you say. So there's a lot of clients calling your bluff and maybe not even realizing they're calling your bluff, or you not. And by responding to them directly, you are diminishing you're diminishing their perception of you as a leader and as someone that they would follow instructions from. So that's why it's super important, not only for the group messaging, but also from their perception of you, that, okay, Gary, Celeste, Pearl, David, these are strong leaders, and they've got a rigid line they stick to. They signposted it to me up front. They gave me 2 more chances, and now they're just ignoring me. That is a reasonable, ultimately, outcome for one of your clients, even if they do ostensibly get angry. This is a good way to make sure that they remain within the groups or within an email trail on email. So there you have it. This is a good way to deal with clients that send one-to-ones and not use the group. Thanks, guys.